I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try, and I try.
Hello and welcome to Call to Action, the go-to podcast for anyone trying to make sense of the world of marketing, advertising and beyond. In an industry that is a minefield of utter bollocks, we aim to capture our heroes and allies from the front line to have a chinwag with. It's like Pokemon Go, with the single but vital exception that it's not a short-term bandwagon of shite. It's brought to you by Gasp, and I'm Giles Edwards, co-founder and MD. Today, I've caught James Victore, designer, author, speaker, teacher, and just all-round cool dude. James is one of those rare professional hellraisers who's been described as part Darth Vader, part Yoda. His often controversial yet striking work is exhibited all around the world, including at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and has also appeared on the covers of Esquire and Time Magazine. He's also worked for clients such as Adobe, Mailchimp and Moet, and recently captured all his learnings in his new book, Feck Perfuction. James says, the things that make you weird as a kid make you great today. It is a superpower. Never let anyone shame it out of you. Welcome to the show, James.
Hey, I am happy to be here, Giles. That was a very groovy introduction. Thank you.
I'm pleased. Right, quick fire then. Beer or wine?
Oh, damn. Depends on the day. Let's say beer.
Designer or teacher?
Oh, former designer, current teacher.
Ask for permission or ask for forgiveness?
Oh, never ask either. just move.
Darth Vader or Yoda?
Today, Yoda.
Dirt bike or surfboard?
Dirt.
Two more. Work or play?
Play is work.
And sexy or strong?
I'll take sexy. I'll take sexy for two, Giles.
Good man. So James, what was your first job, presumably outside of design, maybe, summer job growing up or whatever? And then how did that evolve into proper design?
Outside of, well, actually, great question, Giles. I was kind of stumped there for a second, but my first job, I had it just out of high school and before I moved to New York to become a designer, and I was basically a waiter at a restaurant in my hometown, and the chef there happened to be Buddha in disguise. He super smart, kind gentleman who now owns one of the restaurants in San Francisco that you can't get into. His name was Gary Danko, and he saw something in me, and he said, "Kid, go to New York." He saw the frustration in me, he saw the creativity in me, he saw I didn't belong, and he just said, "Get out of here."
So you did.
Yes, and I'm terribly thankful.
But he's done well for himself. Then it sounds. And then so what did that lead to for you? What happened in New York?
Well, it led me to apply to schools in the design school, art school in New York, and around the country. But I really wanted to be in New York because my parents and all my family are from the Bronx and Scarsdale and areas just north of the city. And we were kids. They used to take us on trips into the city. So New York always had this mysterious draw to it.
And you ended up in the School of Visual Arts, am I right?
Yes, I lasted for I don't know, around 2 years, maybe more, and until one of the instructors took me aside and suggested that he said there were a lot of other people fighting for the same jobs, and he suggested I become a CPA or a golf pro or anything besides a designer.
And then looking back, was that a fair piece of advice? I mean, clearly not, but at the time,
yes.
In that context,
yes. I'm actually thankful. It was a shitty time for me to be in school. I had to have a full-time job to pay my way, and I was making a couple of dollars, and I was basically just chasing skirt and buying beer. So I was not a good student. And but you know what, Giles? As soon as I left, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm screwed because I don't know anything. so I began to educate myself and read good books and to seek out information. And I actually got an apprenticeship at a very tiny little design studio for a guy named Paul Bacon, who is a huge influence on me, and he's like my second father, an amazing guy. And he was a book jacket designer, and I had grown up in basically raised in a library because my mother worked at the university, the local university library. And so books were a natural for me, and Paul Bacon was just a font of information and wealth. He taught me. I always said I haven't thought about this in a while, but I always used to say that he taught me everything I needed to know to be a designer. He taught me about wine, he taught me about auto racing, and he taught me about jazz.
Nice.
It's everything I needed to know. And I met him and he was in his 60s. He died a couple years ago and he was 90 something years old. But he was just this very classic, very tall, lean, scholarly looking gentleman with a very fine little mustache. And but the guy could tell a joke that would singe your eyebrows off.
Amazing. And he was he sounds like, anyway, more like a traditional book designer, graphic designer, so he knew his way around a grid and all that kind of core stuff you need to
he was pretty freewheeling. There was a grid in his head, I'm sure, but so he did, to give you and your readers an idea, like he did pretty much all of Robert Ludlum's books when they first came out, all the Bourne books. He did all of James Clavell's books. He did most of E.L. Doctorow, most of Kurt Vonnegut's books, all of Joseph Heller's books. So all these kind of like big book. If you go to a used bookstore, it's like a museum for Paul Bacon.
Cool.
Like the old what is it? Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. That was his.
Was it? I know that. Yeah.
Book cover for Jaws that became the movie poster. He did the book cover for just a number of all the classics that from the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. It was just wonderful work.
Amazing. So was that down to luck as much as anything else that you managed to get in on his little studio?
He was a teacher of mine at SVA, and he gave me a D. But I went to him, I went to him anyway, and there were two gals who worked with him, and I asked if I could, I said apprentice. I didn't even know what the word intern meant. And he just looked at me and he said, "Well, no one ever asked." So he took me on, and I'd show up in the morning and I'd sweep the floor and look over his shoulder. And after 3 months after leaving school, I'd put together a portfolio of 3 obviously fake book jackets, but books that I respected, and got work right off the bat. And I've been working steady ever since.
Okay. So you didn't actually start working alongside Paul necessarily or directly.
No, I did. I handled, his production and put mechanicals together for him. And, this was obviously pre-computer, and did that kind of stuff. And, we did, there was a stat camera. So I was in charge of, making stats. It was basically like a fancy Xerox machine. So I never really had, I have never really had a real job besides, my own studio.
Amazing. So what happened between that and setting up your own studio there? Because at somewhere in between, you probably moved your attention from books to posters.
Well, I had to go backwards again. My father was in the Air Force, and he was gone most of my life because he was in Vietnam, and he would bring back posters. These classic. There's one that I remember that I'm still looking for. It said it was an image of some Marines storming a beach, and it said, "Visit interesting places, meet interesting people, and kill them."
Wow.
Vietnam. It was set up as like a fake tourism poster,
Yeah.
And he didn't see the irony in it.
Wow. But he bought one back.
Yeah. And so posters were always in my blood, and I always I always liked the Olympic posters. They were always moving to me in the in the 60s and 70s, until they turned to shit lately.
Yeah.
But so posters were always in my blood. Also, the anti-war posters, the Tommy Ungerer stuff, and some of the stuff that Pushpin did. Posters have always been in my blood. And I got to New York thinking I was going to be a poster designer. And then I realized there was no money in it. There were no jobs to make posters.
Yeah.
Literally no jobs to make posters. So I started off doing book jackets, and then all of a sudden I was like, in my middle late 20s, and I realized, shit, I'm not, I'm just doing book jackets. I'm not doing, what I want, which was posters. So I started just making posters on my own dime, and they did critically. They did well. It was a bad business plan, or zero business plan. But critically, they did well. But they led me to what I say, that that was my purpose. My purpose wasn't to make book jackets. My purpose was to make social, cultural, and political statements in posters.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that posters are still kind of your preferred medium? I mean, I don't want to get into like a binary chat of this is better than that, but clearly,
Yeah. No, I love posters, and the thing is, they're just nobody does them well. Quite frankly, there aren't a lot of great ones out there. Even there's these books. There are books you can buy of like political or social posters from the last 20 years, and most of the stuff in there is not. It's just not that great. And part of it is because people are really afraid to have an opinion. I worked for. As a poster designer, I made work for the JDL, which is the Jewish Defense League, the NAACP, the Anti-Defamation League, Amnesty International. All these companies, or organizations rather, and rarely did we ever get anything good out of it, because they get their money from teachers and from nanas who want to send in $5, and and if you start ruffling feathers and rocking the boat, or telling the fucking truth, people have a problem with that. Especially if you look at the AIDS epidemic. I mean, just the shit that was done. It was all like pretty boys in nice photographs, but it didn't talk about death, and it didn't talk about disease, and it didn't talk about fucking Ronald Reagan ignoring the whole thing. It was so I wanted to be part of. I wanted to use that purpose, and use the power of an opinion and the power of the printing press, and make work that mattered.
And you saw that, didn't you? Certainly with the celebration of Columbus response and the Native American series. Is that the first time you saw that?
Well, it's still. It's still, that poster still comes up in places. It's weird, it's just taken on a life of its own, and that's an interesting subject, because it's an ongoing genocide. If you could watch the press in the States here, what's going on with the what is it, the Dakota pipeline, and the oil industry and the Native Americans, it's just amazing. And the Native Americans are like, especially in the States right now, we have this bullshit fucking president who's saying America first, and America for Americans, and the Native Americans are going like, wait, what the fuck are you talking about? Why don't you go home, go back to Europe? And so it's a little bit, as Elton John would say, it's a little bit funny.
Since then, you've done so many things, James. We won't have time to cover it, but as a
let's do
it. Let's make
embarrass me, Giles. It's okay.
So the work that if you feel like you've spoken about this enough, then we'll skip it. But I love it. The work you did for the New York probation office.
Yeah.
Your birds learn to fly by falling. All that cool stuff.
It led that project kind of led to Feck Perfuction.
Okay, cool. And that's just come out.
Yeah, it came out, and it started in March or April, and so yeah.
So can you tell anyone who's listening who's not familiar with that work? Can you just give us a little overview of what the project was, what the brief was, and then what you did?
Yeah. So we worked with the New York Department of Probation, the New York City Department of Probation. They have 33 offices around the city, and they're just hellish just dreadful bureaucratic places that you just don't want to go, they're just sad and depressing. And you talk to people through a little hole in the glass, like you're buying booze in a bad part of Russia. So there was an architect pal of mine. His name is Jim Bieber, Biber, super guy. He got the gig to redesign from the rug to the ceiling these 33 offices, and he took me on as the kind of experience designer, or the what do you even call it, like see, I'm like so not hip. What is it? The client experience or whatever, but interior, like the paint and the walls and the signage and the wayfinding, as you say, And then halfway through the project, I was like, wait, this, I bemoan the lack of art in my own life. I live in New York City and I don't see art because I have to go to a fucking special place and pay money, which is bullshit. So I said, well, let's make some art for this client. And I decided to make, a series of parodies of those inspirational posters, like everything from from Hang in There Kitty to the image of the Jets that says teamwork, or the image of an eagle and it says vision. So we have a series of like 4, 5, or 6 posters that we made we use the jets and we use the eagle and we use the footprints in the sand. And we were working with a really great, smart client at the time, which was the guy who just started. He started up. He was new at the DOP and he was in charge, and he really just trusted us and let us do great work. I mean, I could do a 2-hour talk on this thing. It's such an amazing project. They really saw an effect on their client. And one of the things that would, for a small example, is one of the things that would happen in the beginning was the elevator doors would open. You'd have to go to like the 4th or 5th floors of these humongous New York City downtown city hall buildings, right? And the door opens in the elevator and the client walks out and looks around and then takes 2 steps backward into the elevator and lets the doors close because they thought they were in the wrong place. And the reason they thought they were in the wrong place, Giles, is because they've never been treated well, because they're not used to people doing things for them, because they don't have these nice things in their lives. And that's bullshit. So if we can, after the project, I was interviewed a number of times, and people always ask the question, what research did you do, for this project? And I said, research? What's that? I said, I know this client. They're me. They just got caught. They want the same things I do. They want to be treated well. They want to be treated with respect. They want to be spoken up to, not down to. They want to have nice things in their lives, right? Yeah. So it's not that difficult if you think about it.
What we'll do, we always post stuff that's discussed on each podcast episode on the listing. So if you're out there listening to this now, you can head over to this podcast listening, and I'm going to stick a few photos up of the before and after, because the before shots are, I mean, they're for want of a better word, they're just soulless spaces where you kind of
Orwellian,
and you walk out and there's what hits you are all these badly considered signs just berating you for not sitting up straight, or it's like this horrific orgy of like your worst head teacher kind of nightmare just shouting at you.
Yeah, it's
really confrontational, isn't it?
Yeah, it's out of like Pink Floyd, The Wall.
Yeah, exactly that. So your point about research is bang on, because on the flip side, we're fans of research in the right context and for the right projects. But you're absolutely right. That's just a human thing, isn't it? You don't need to do research to know that is not an acceptable way to treat people, or even expect anything in return from these people. You're setting them up to fail.
Exactly. Yeah, even to ask, even to expect an honest conversation in that atmosphere.
Yeah. On honest conversations, I recall I recall you talking about this project. It's probably a few years ago now, in truth, and it's always stuck in my head because I remember it might have been in response to the Hang In There Kitty poster. It was certainly one of them, and someone who was in effect your client, or certainly a stakeholder that side of the fence, said something to you about, is this dangerous? Are we the whole let go? Are we promoting? I don't know what it was. It probably wasn't suicide, but it was something ridiculous.
Yeah, suicide.
And I remember you saying in the video that you had to diplomatically say, "Are you fucking serious?"
I know. How do you shoot that down, boy? You got to be pretty good in a meeting to be able to shoot that down, and I couldn't do it.
But you get it, don't you? I mean, we get it in less severe kind of examples, but I find myself thinking that sometimes. I won't give any examples because I'll probably get sacked by a client, but yeah, you do get that. You get that. So in that instance, I mean, I guess you were putting a job title to it, whether you were like an experienced designer or interior or whatever it was. So actually, when it comes to defining you individually and what you do as a profession, I mean, are you able to even do that? Are you an artist? Are you a designer? I mean, that's before we even think about the teacher debate.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. I'm basically I am an abstract expressionist caught in a designer's body. I think that's it. And yeah, forget about even the teaching thing. And as far as the teaching thing, I said something recently, and I actually really like it. I am becoming Moses for graphic designers.
Amazing.
Set my people free.
So your tools are graphic design tools, but there's a lot more going on.
Well, you know what I say, Giles, is that I'm using art and design as a teaspoon of sugar to talk about bigger ideas.
Yeah,
and I think people get it because without the art and design part, I'm anybody's crappy inspirational Instagram feed.
Perfect. Well, that works. Because if you
go girl, a bunch of be you.
Nice. Well, whatever, that's fit for purpose, isn't it, on Insta? So that works. Because I mean, the reason I asked, I've got friends who I suppose my background anyway, and this podcast isn't about me, so I'll keep this short, but is more art based, but it's led into graphic design. And actually, I have lots of friends who prefer to define themselves quite tightly as an artist and don't like that overlap into design. And I kind of see it as it's a bit like pure. I suppose if you're looking at mathematics, right, and we're not, but it's pure mathematics and applied mathematics. And I see the same thing with creative fields and art and design and that. So
yeah,
you've got pure art, but then applied art is really your design because you're applying it for a purpose, and that purpose or objective might be to raise awareness of bullshit around celebrating Columbus, whatever it might be at the time. So that's kind of how I cope with it.
I've got two, actually three major influences on me artistically, and they were all born in the same year, and they all died around this. It was Henryk Tomaszewski, Paul Rand, and Saul Steinberg. And Paul Rand, I knew Paul, and I knew Henryk Tomaszewski. And I had a conversation with Steinberg. But Paul Rand, like, for him, to be a designer or an artist, it was no big thing. He just did the things. For Saul Steinberg, I was in a conversation on the phone with him, and I was trying to give him a job, and he was just like, he just couldn't understand. He just couldn't understand. He's like, wait, I am going to make something at your request. He was just an artist. He couldn't understand that. Paul Rand kind of needed a client or a prompt or a purpose, and Steinberg was just like, that was ludicrous. Why would I do that?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? There's obviously overlaps, but sometimes there's nothing. It's one or the other.
Yeah, I was years ago. I was asked about somebody after one of my talks asked me about. We were talking about the dead Indian, the Celebrate Columbus, and they said, okay, so Mr. Victore, you paid for that on your own money and you got it put up on your own, so it's more art than design. And I said, oh, you're one of those people who gives a shit about that. Because I don't.
Yeah, that's fair.
It doesn't matter. I mean, it's got type on it, so it must be design, but so does Jasper John's stuff. So, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So then, I mean, that work you've now said, which is really cool, that it led to or in many ways led to the Feck Perfuction book. Is there any particular lesson, I was going to say, but any particular poster that you would say is your most important? I mean, personally, for me, Birds Learn to Fly by Falling is pure gold. So we've got that up in our boardroom, just because it's just perfect. We're always telling people to fail, just fail fast and move on. Like don't fear mistakes, because if you do, you'll just become this kind of risk adverse thing, just treading water for your whole life. Just try.
Sure,
stuff.
you're just you're in survival mode your whole life.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I think The Dead Indian is one of my favorites. I have one poster of mine up in my house, and it's actually an exhibition poster for some stuff that happened in some Dutch couple of Dutch museums, and it was called Pop Up, and it's just because it's a bright orange. It's a Swiss style, so it's huge. Bright orange with black and white finger paint. And I just aesthetically I really dig it. There's no idea behind it. Those are the things that I can stomach to still look at. I've had exhibitions of my work, like just me, and I walk into the room and it just feels like all of my dirty laundry hanging out there.
Oh, no, you can't mean that.
Really? Somebody wants to look at this stuff? Okay.
Here it is. So what else can people enjoy or expect from the book then?
My first book is the big $40 coffee table. It's called Who Died and Made You Boss, and it's a look at like 25 years of design work, and that I call pictures with words. And I knew that the follow-up to it was going to be words with pictures, meaning I was going to write, what I thought were compelling, interesting, moving articles, and then illuminate those or illustrate those. And now I'm out on our porch at 4:30 every morning, writing the next book.
Are you really? Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So why is it such an early bird thing?
I have 2 kids.
No, you said, yeah, no.
It's the only solitude I can find. One, again, my father was in the military. He got up early. It just kind of comes natural to me. It's you want to do those things your dad did. I like it because, like I said, like this morning was just sublime. We've got a little corner of the porch, and we live on a bit of property with no neighbors, and it's just like quiet, and there's a breeze, and
Nice.
you can watch the sun come up, and literally can get 2 hours of solid concentration, which is, once the day starts, I got an assistant that shows up. I got, emails are bing, bing, bing. I got duties. I got to do the fucking dishes, I mean, like, maintain the house, and, I've got to be a good dad and a loving husband, and, blah, 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 blah. But, 4:30 is mine.
Yeah, nice. Well, you keep owning that time. So there's other bits of advice that kind of creep out in various guises, I guess. You've done it through the pod, through your own video, vlogs that you do, through Twitter, through just social media in general. But one thing that comes up a lot, which I'm a particular fan of, is never work for arseholes and fire bad clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, so Giles, listen, you understand this. It's hard to just be creative. Like, it's hard to, everybody is, in the first line in Feck Perfuction says, we are all born wildly creative, and some of us just forgot, meaning we're all born creative, and it's hard to hang on to that throughout your life. So the reason I put the book together was, just to acknowledge the difficulty of maintaining creativity or your weirdness, as an adult. And then on top of just being creative, you start mixing that with commerce, and it gets really, murky. It gets really bizarre.
Mm.
And how can I get paid for my creativity, and not be a racehorse tied to a cart?
Mm.
So that's where those ideas come up with, like firing bad clients. And what happens when you fire bad clients is you're telling the universe that I'm not gonna, I don't want to be treated like this. And the universe, what do they say? Abhors a vacuum. So they'll help you find those good clients. And if it's a money thing, most people are just like, well, James, I can't do that. I need money. And I'm like, well, how many steaks can you eat? How badly do you need that money? Why can't you just accept less and have a better life? Completely un-American thought there.
It is,
by
yeah,
the way.
right. It is, isn't it? That's true. That's true. Actually, it's a consistent I've found. Actually, the more Americans we know, we work with, whatever, it seems to be quite a cultural shift between UK and US, making huge assumptions and stereotypes and what have you. But if we just ignore that for now, it's,
Well, no, I don't think so. I'm like, I've got clients and people I work with in the UK, and I try to get in touch with them, anywhere last month or this month, and it's like the email comes back, I'm on halls, and I'm like, oh, fuck you.
Yeah, you guys don't do that. You guys don't go on holiday. Well, you do, but you're reluctant to.
Reluctant to, yeah.
So I guess
yeah.
then all this stuff we're talking about the last sort of 5-10 minutes, it's only natural you did shift or have shifted into more of a teaching capacity. I know I've heard you say in the past you consider yourself a greater teacher than designer. So why is that? Is that just because this stuff just comes more naturally to you? Is it because you just don't take any shit? I mean, how has that happened?
I think it's because, well, I've done, early, I haven't done it in a long time, but early on I did all those aptitude tests, like, the Myers-Briggs and all that kind of stuff. And every one it comes up that I'm a teacher. And for me, for the longest time, that was horrible because I couldn't picture anything in my mind except standing up in front of a group of 19-year-old shitheads, until I figured out how to be the teacher I wanted to be. And to be more of a guide or a leader. It just comes very easy for me. I do one-on-one coaching with people, and it's just, I'm amazed at how easy it is for me to like call them on their shit, and for me to help them recognize something that's right in front of them and they haven't been able to see it. And I'm like, I'm good at that. I'm also good at, putting, typing images on paper. But I like teaching.
And I guess also, I mean, putting words in your mouth here, so tell me if I'm wrong, but unless you have a reference to someone who was like an inspirational teacher in your life, and you had a couple, I suppose, latterly, even though Paul gave you a D at the time, but unless you had that reference, your brain's like a pattern making machine, isn't it? And if it's telling you you're a teacher and all the teachers you grew up with were dicks, you're not thinking you want to be a teacher.
Correct. Yeah, correct. I couldn't frame it. I couldn't figure out, how that was going to work for me. And I did teach. I taught, I went back to the School of Visual Arts and I taught for 20 years.
Amazing. That's
cool. And it took them 3 years to accept me, to take me on as a teacher. But all those were also the 3 years that I was having, all these solo exhibitions, and they said, "Oh, okay, I guess we should let him in." Because they looked at my record and were like, "Oh no, this guy's a jack off."
I hope you went in and started flipping desks.
Yeah, well, I was the guy who would, literally bring fireworks into class.
Oh, legend. So then in terms of your actual teaching, I mean, that takes many forms itself, doesn't it? Because there's courses you do. I suppose that I imagine the most intimate and most successful, if you're being taught, are the ones your creative retreats that you run on Rancho Victore.
Yeah, Rancho hashtag Rancho Victore.
Yeah, so they must be great. Do you enjoy doing them?
Oh man, Giles, they're first of all, they're the hardest work we do every year. But they're so much fun, and I tell there's so much. I mean, I could talk forever on this thing. We tell everybody, listen, if there's no tears, then we're not doing our job. But we really help people open up, and they come here to find their voice, or to to relinquish themselves from asking for permission, to gain a little personal freedom. They come here for a number of reasons, but they generally don't leave hungry. And it's like by Sunday afternoon, it's like, okay, all you people, you gotta go.
Yeah, this is done.
Yeah, I'm exhausted. But it's a blast, and we eat and drink, and we have nights by the campfire with the coyotes singing.
Wow.
It's fun.
And how often do you do those?
We've got one coming up October 25 through 27. That's the fall one. And then we've got I think we're gonna have 2 in the spring. I don't know those dates just yet. We usually do them twice a year, but now we're gonna start doing them 3 times.
Cool. And are they open presumably to individuals or do you get groups?
We don't. Well, we did get 3 people from an agency once, and then last time around we had actually 2 married couples. And I tell any groups, I say, listen, it's fine, you can come, but you need to, if you're not open and honest in front of each other, then this is not going to work. Like if you're not allowed to express yourself and your opinion, then then don't come.
Yeah, because you put a lot of importance on that kind of connection to yourself, don't you? And if you're hindered doing that because your wife or husband, whichever way around it is there, then yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yeah,
and that's natural,
exactly.
isn't it?
So yeah, sure. Of course it is. Of course. And, there's just there are a lot of moments of really kind of, I'll take people on one-on-one walks and say, hey, by the way, I noticed this thing about you, what's up with that? And they go, oh yeah. Okay.
So why do the tears come? What causes tears?
Because it's a peeling off of their limitations. We fall in love with our limitations when we tell ourselves that we can't do stuff, and it's just not true. So getting rid of that, it hurts sometimes. Asking people to look at the open sore on that they have. I'm gonna sneeze. Hold on. Okay, no sneeze.
Oh, I hate losing sneezes.
Yeah, they're like a little orgasm. I love them. And it's difficult to see ourselves honestly. And what we do is we try to do that at the workshop. We try to, force people to look inward. We had a design instructor come last time around, and he's been doing it for a while. And he wrote us after, and he had so many breakthroughs at this thing. Like he was, he's working on some projects, and I would look over his shoulder, and I'm like, David, stop being a designer. Because designers approach things with ready-made answers. They don't approach things fresh and new and with questions, right? They're like, oh, I can solve this. Like, no, don't fucking solve it. And he wrote after a big long thing. And he said, I thought I was going to go there to learn some tricks and tools and bring them back, for myself and for my, for my students. And he says, I realized you were asking me to be a better human and a better artist. And he says, and I can bring that to my students now. And that kind of stuff is huge. It's so important.
Yeah, people shut it out, don't
Sure.
they? I mean, it's that.
Well, they don't know. They don't know how powerful they are.
It's that little light of mine, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's all. But we really love doing this, and my wife does. Has 2 sessions with them, and she does like movement and movement and meditation stuff. And it just like these people haven't been in their bodies in so long. They haven't done a Soul Train dance line. Since they were teenagers, right? We try to get them out of their heads and free them up. And I can't with good intentions, I can't have them be here, and I could teach them to use some left brain skills and some tools that are clumsy and paints and inks and stuff and draw with a broom and this kind of stuff. But I'm not doing anything for them. I'm just letting them play and go back to art school or go back to middle school for a short time, but they're still going to go back to relationships that chafe, or a job they hate, or a boss they've lost connection with. I've got to send them back, stronger and smarter.
Yeah. And do people come back, or is the idea that they've seen Moses, they don't need to see him again?
We have not had. Have we had? Oh, we had a return from. We used to do this in New York, and it was called the Dinner Series, and we had somebody from the Dinner Series come to do the workshop here in Texas because it's kind of a different animal. But I don't really change the. I don't really change the thing that much. And if you had questions, then you're going to have the same questions later. What we say is you can't be a better creator and a better contributor to society until you decide to become a better human being. So that's what we try to work with them on.
So how can you sign up? Let's plug this. How can people get involved?
JamesVictore.com. There's a tab called, I think it's called workshops, and there's a couple things there, and the ranch is there. The creative retreat is there. We've got one person coming from the UK this time that I know of. Yeah, no, and it's funny because we're in Texas and we don't get anybody from Texas.
Do you not?
They're literally from around the world. And that worked when we were in New York too. We didn't get New Yorkers because they're like, oh, I could see James anytime. We got people from all around the world. It's so great. Yes, more Giles.
Yeah, more. Well, I mean, now's a good time actually to put a couple of listener questions to you, if I may.
Sure.
Asking the general public for their opinion, be it on Brexit or boat names, is notoriously fraught with danger. But that's not stopped us asking. So, as usual, we've selected two. So, starting with John. John's a young designer. So, he says, I've heard you say, rightly, I've stopped designing for designers when talking about the vast amount of typefaces out there. And you then reference your 5 or so workhorse fonts. What are they?
I think I have less now.
Well, let's give John less.
John, the workhorse typefaces, and I do this because I believe that a huge part of what we do as designers is random. I've got a new gal in the studio right now, and I asked her to take on I've got a really nice client right now, and I said, here's a couple things for you to do. And I come back later and she's done like a million different sketches. I'm like, oh no. Just choose one. It doesn't matter. They're going to be great. Just, trust yourself. So that's the thing with typefaces. I'm like, I've stopped making those decisions. And I just use a couple different fonts. I use my handwriting probably way too much. I don't like my handwriting, but I understand that other people do. And I'm always trying to augment it. I'm always trying to take on another letter. I don't have a very good capital C right now.
I'll send you one.
Yeah, please. I'm always looking for new. I got a capital L, but I use that. My wife's name is Laura, so I kind of like in my mind that's her letter, so I kind of can't use that. But I use my handwriting. Second to handwriting comes Helvetica Neue, because it comes in some nice weights. And it's obviously a computer thing. I also like to trace Helvetica Neue. Like you set your type and then print it out and then put some tracing paper over and trace the Helvetica, and that looks very groovy too. Because it's like Helvetica, but it's wrong.
There's some imperfections.
Yeah, I use Feck Perfuction is designed the guts. The cover is Helvetica, and the guts are Minion. And the reason we use Minion is because it was about Feck Perfuction, so Minion is a default font, and that was the reason to use it. It made sense. Again, no choices. I didn't make a choice on that. And then I think the last one that I like using is, and I haven't found anything in a while to use it besides the stickers that we make, is Cooper Black. I love Cooper Black.
Yeah, and in fact, actually on the question, he put Cooper Black in brackets, but he didn't have any others. So yeah, but you're right. And
Cooper's still there.
Yeah, of course. And actually, this is where I certainly agree with you on it's more about the words and the language and what you're saying, isn't it? The typeface is a vehicle, and it can be a better vehicle or a more appropriate vehicle in some instances. But actually, if that's your starting point, you're trying to answer the tiny question before you're answering the big main important question.
Yeah. If anybody ever says to me, "Hey, let's talk about typography," I'll say, "Hey, no, let's talk about poetry." That's interesting.
Yeah, and that moves people in a way that typography, can't really claim to. Although I am a bit of a type geek, but I'm still see myself on your side of the fence on this. A question.
I'll forgive you.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Like Moses, I'll forgive
Yeah,
you.
you'll cure me, hopefully. So Mel, so we got a question from Mel, and she has said she asked why are people so afraid to have an opinion?
Is it Mel? You
Mel,
said?
yeah, Melanie, I imagine it's short for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Melanie Mel. So I was just writing about that this morning on the porch, and the piece that I was writing is called "Fear Does Not Equal Death," because most people are afraid to have an opinion, because having an opinion means standing out.
Mm.
And standing out means risking being shunned or abandoned or ostracized, or people moving away from you. And it's a very primal fear, because historically we lived in groups, and if you were ostracized from the group, you died. And it's like an animal. If its caretakers die, then it will die very quickly, because it's left on its own. So it's a very primal, natural thing for us to be afraid of, moving away from the crowd, moving away from the normal. And having an opinion means that you are moving away from the normal, right? You're like, yes, I understand, but here's what I think. And some people are going to love that, and some people are going to hate that. And we don't want to risk, not being understood. And then the thing, and to top that, the thing about being understood is to be misunderstood is genius. Galileo was misunderstood. Pythagoras was misunderstood. Jesus was misunderstood. So yes, so have a goddamn opinion and get used to it. And then that's how you really attract your crowd, your audience. Fuck the people who move away from you. Those are not your people.
Yeah, well said. So the final part of the interview then, James, is we have what we call our 4 pertinent poses, which we can skip through at your leisure or at pace. So there's 4 questions. Number 1 is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I like this question, and it always comes up that it's the question that I need to, it's what I need to tell myself all the time, and it's that I need to relax. I need to relax, and I need to. My wife gave me a mantra a month ago, and I try to use it all the time. And I share it with everybody, and I basically say, everything is always working out for me. No matter what happens, everything is always working out for me. And I have to understand that. And, then whatever comes at you, the good and the bad, is what's supposed to come at you, and it's fine. So relax.
Nice. If you could banish one thing from the industry, what would it be and why? So I guess we're talking design, art, the whole shebang.
Yeah, probably computers.
Yeah, well, we're all glued to our screens. Well, not at the ranch, but
no computers, no phones at the ranch. Jeez. The computer is a funny thing. I don't believe that it's made the field better. It's not a great answer, but I'm gonna stick with it.
No, it's fine. We've not had that before, and I think it's a good one. Number 3, any books that you would recommend?
Besides Feck Perfuction, Dangerous Ideas on the Business of Life.
Yeah. No, we're going to link to those. We'll link to those for sure.
I am I'm a David Foster Wallace fan, and there are 2 books that he has. One is called Consider the Lobster. And it's a collection of shorter pieces that he's written, and they're hilarious and they're smart, and it really shows him as a person. And there's a smaller piece by him called This Is Water. So Consider the Lobster is fun and entertaining, and This Is Water is so smart and moving. It's presented as a book, but it was a graduation speech that he gave a number of years ago. So those 2 by David Foster Wallace.
Cool. Well, we'll link to those as well. The fourth one, is less of a question, more of a request. We always dedicate every show to somebody, and we bestow or hospital pass that honour, depending on your view, to our guest, who has to give their reason why. So would you do the honours?
You know who I love right now is, her name escapes me. Is it Greta,
Mm.
the environmentalist,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
young,
The young lady. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, she's amazing. And she's amazing because she has a mild form of autism, and that's her superpower, and it allows her to focus, and it allows her to, like, to not listen to the critics. She's amazing.
Awesome. That's a great dedication. As a final call to action, then, James, or everyone listening, in fact, can head over to this episode, and we've linked to everything discussed, from the David Foster books to workshops on the ranch with James, to all of James's work and the work with the probation office that we discussed at the start. How else can people get more James Victore?
The best way right now is jamesvictoria.com. Everything is there. Access to the book, access to the workshops, access to any videos that we do. And then please follow me on Instagram, and that's just James Victore, because that's where we play, and that's where I test ideas. So I'm testing a lot of ideas and words for the new book right now, and some of them are coming up pretty good. So
Cool.
yeah.
Perfect. Well,
Take a look at Instagram.
Yeah, we'll link to that as well.
Super.
Thank you so much, James, for joining us. As you know, it's been a real privilege and a huge pleasure.
Cool. Well, I had a blast, and I love talking to you, Giles.
Good man. We're giving away a copy of James's book, Feck Perfuction, to one lucky listener who leaves us a review online. Please remember to include one of your social handles on the review so we can contact you in the event of you winning, or simply email us a screenshot of the review to hello@calltoaction.co. Finally, thank you to everyone listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do share it. We really appreciate the support. Keep the questions and guest requests coming in. To get in touch with us, it's easy to find Gasp online. You can check out CTA Pod on Instagram, or email hello@calltoaction.co.
I can't get no call to action. I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try, and I try.